Hi, everybody. Welcome. If you're new to my channel, my name is Linda Kay, and I am here talking with Dr. Ed Johnston. And we all know him from Criminal Justice Natters, correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
So if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us about your long list of credits, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for having me. So my name's Ed Johnston. I'm a senior lecturer in law at the University of West of England as my day job. And I research and teach criminal procedure with a particular interest in fair trial rights and the role of the defense lawyer. And sort of part of a sort of natural progression in terms of trying to get sort of my work that's from academic journals and into the wider sort of community, I thought a YouTube channel of breaking down complex criminal justice issues into something that can be digested by my mum's the goal, really. She says she reads the books and the articles, but I'm not entirely sure. Well, I just don't know. I don't know if she does, but it was the goal of like having something like that, of like these issues are important, and I didn't want just to focus on sort of defense representation. I want like a broad spectrum of issues within the criminal justice system because there's problems at every single stage. That was the goal of the channel, and that's what I set out to do in sort of October. I had a buddy of mine, his name's Andrew Allen. He really encouraged me to do it. Because I didn't know if people would be interested. I didn't know if I could get people. So yeah, I had the encouragement from him and encouragement from my partner, Wolfie. And she was like, it's going to be great. So
it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
We are all very interested. I mean, you've had some excellent, like I said, what's your secret? I mean, that's how we first met, was me leaving a comment. What's your secret? Because I've been doing this for a year. I'm, not real big on views and everything, but look at Kathleen's interview. You've gotten how many 5K, 6K views already?
Yeah, almost 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's fantastic, and your guests are interesting, and they're right in our realm of our community. Every single one of the interviews you've had have to do with what we are all invested in a daily basis. So, just that in itself is wonderful for us. So welcome to our community.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's really great to meet you. And your background is so interesting. Criminal defense, that's so broad, but to make it where it's fair, where you have the fair part of it, because it's really hard to, we see the injustice in the cases that we look at. Mm-hmm. So breaking it down in the fairness part, to me, that's like kind of changing the justice system. There's so many things wrong with it in our day now. When they made it back then, it probably fit, but there's so much mental issues going on with people, different scenarios. It's hard to just have that one thing. So do you hope to make a change with what you do?
Hopefully, yeah. Ideally, what I would want would be a fairer justice system, and that starts right at the beginning. Once someone is arrested, I think in England and Wales in particular, and in the broader sense of the word of society, I think there's a presumption of belief that the police have the correct person immediately. And I think there are so many safeguards that are designed to protect people from unjust convictions or miscarriages of justice. And I don't necessarily think they work entirely as designed. So ultimately, some form of change to make things better would be the end goal. But in terms of sort of just criminal defense, we don't have enough young people going into it as practicing lawyers in this country. The average age of a criminal defense lawyer in some parts of England and Wales will be in their 60s, especially that's true in rural areas. Students don't necessarily see it as a viable career, but the ones who do buy into it have such passion for, to make the system work, to make it fair. Everybody should be presumed innocent when you are arrested, when you are charged, until you are convicted. And I don't necessarily think that plays out in the media and just in the general sense of the word. I don't think people respect the presumption of innocence.
I agree. I have to agree with you 100%. I don't think there is any innocent until proven guilty anymore.
No.
It's you're guilty and you need to prove your innocence.
Yeah.
And it just changes the whole dynamics of anything in court. You know, I mean, before it was all the state has to prove, the state has to prove, all you have to do is defend, you know, and now it's you have to bring up things that are, you know, like their job, you know, so it just changes it completely. I do have a question right away. It says, from Miss Piggy, what is your personal view on the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases?
Well, they're obviously inextricably linked, for one, so you can tackle this together. I believe neither of them committed the offence. I've only based it on, you know, the lawyers I've spoken to and the Netflix show. I'm not as invested in terms of you guys who carry out research, and I've spoken to people on Twitter who are carrying out their own experiments involving blood and everything else. And,
yeah,
I think it's fantastic work. But to answer the question, I think Brendon was coerced into a confession. And unfortunately, that had a domino effect on Stephen, because there's no DNA evidence, there's no eyewitnesses, there's no credible evidence that says he committed that murder.
Right.
It's based on this false confession of a boy who has various mental disabilities, and he was taken advantage of. What really pains me about the show, watching the show, is that he has no defense representation or appropriate adult in that room. He's a 14-year-old boy that wants to go back to class or make sure his mum tapes the wrestling.
Yep, exactly.
And he thinks he goes home.
And then when, like you said, we dig into it, so we've read beyond. I mean, Making a Murder was just a window for us, and now we just completely opened up all the doors. And looking into it, when you read like the interrogations from Brendon, which we were just started getting into on Brendan's channel, and it's heartbreaking to see the method that they used. You can tell a method right away. And Brendan's disability is language. He has a hard time with too many words. So right away they bombard him with a paragraph of words, and he's not saying nothing. And he's trying to minimize any involvement by saying toes, and they add a foot. You see, then he says he sees part of a forehead, so they add a head. And at the end, you have him confessing to things that he just had no idea of. And it is, you can see it. And that to me is what bothers me, is that most of us are non-professionals. We're not lawyers. We're not specialists in confessions, and we can see it. So for us, it's mainly, why don't they get it? What is in the law that stops it? Well, to me, it's being innocent means nothing in our justice system. Whether you're in, it doesn't mean anything once you're convicted. So they go by the conviction. So it's hard for them to get past the conviction, especially with a jury trial. In your country, you don't have jury trials, correct?
No, we do have jury trials.
You do?
Okay. Yeah, in about 4% of all cases, will end up in a jury trial. They're very rare in the larger scheme of things. The vast majority of cases are heard by a magistrate or a bench of magistrates who are lay people who are trained for about 20 hours a year or so.
They get training.
They do
juries
get some
training.
Yeah. No, not juries. The magistrates. Juries.
Oh, the magistrate. Yeah. Okay.
Complete lay people juries. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we need education in our juries. They need to know what exactly their job is, and if they are being tried to be swayed from their view, they need to be able to report that. What can they ask for to see, you know. I mean, there's so much. I'm just a regular person. If I got called for jury duty, I'm not really sure what my rights are there. So I really kind of think we need to change that. That's one of my things. But you know, so
And
but in all your interviews that you've done with the lawyers, is there anything that you just in general, what do you get out of from them, what they're saying? You know, I mean, what's your biggest takeaway?
the one I've not published this one yet. I'm still working on sort of editing it in and sorting that out. But last week I spoke to Professor Gisli Johnston, who's the world lead on false confessions.
Wow.
And so he's an expert witness in a number of cases, and talks about how police manipulate suspects into confessing. So in terms of Brendon's case, we had a very brief conversation where he says, like, the officers make physical contact. So he touches Brendon's leg or his thigh, and just to make it seem like you're friends. And it's all very clever. And I think he is possibly the most interesting person, not only that I've spoken to for the show, but one of the most interesting people I've ever spoken to.
Wow. I'm looking forward to it.
Just the sheer breadth of cases he's dealt with, both in England, in home in Iceland, in the USA. This isn't a problem that's exclusive to one jurisdiction.
Right.
Every jurisdiction have people that falsely confess. And then it sort of made me think of, like, well, because there's different types of false confessions. You could do it for a raft of reasons, a lesser sentence, just to escape a particular situation of, like, the police interrogation room. So you just say you've done it. It just made me think about how many people in prison have falsely confessed. And I would bet that there is a higher percentage than the majority of people would be willing to go. There's a high percentage in prison of people.
Yeah, and then you have these people like Fallon saying that innocent people don't confess. That is not true.
It's absolutely not true. There's a wealth of academic literature. There's a wealth of cases of innocent people who don't confess. And when I teach false confessions to my students, I give them the story of me of when I was 7 years old. I didn't realize it was a false confession at the time, but there were 3 boys in my primary school. So I was 7 or 8 years old. And the teacher said, each of you have had access to this book and you've taken it home. And there's lots of drawing and scribbling out in this book. And you're not going out on break to go and play with your friends and go play football in the playground until one of you tells me who it is. Now, we are probably there for about 3 minutes. But I said, it happened in my house. I said my little sister did it. She was about 4 at the time. I said she must have got it off. I remember this vividly. I said she must have got it off of a record player in my parents' lounge, and she must have coloured it in. Now, I knew as I was saying that is a complete lie. But I wanted to go and eat my chocolate bar and run around with my friends to get out of that situation. And I think, it's the same.
It's just as simple as that, right?
It really is. So
it's just as simple as that. I agree. I seen a case last night that I was watching on Reasonable Doubt. I don't remember the name of the case, but the guy only said one word just so he could get out of there. He just said one sentence. I didn't want it to look like it was a suicide. It was something like that. And so they convicted him on that. So when you're convicted on words, that's the hardest thing in the world to prove that wasn't right, unless you see the cops beating them or whatever. But with Brendon, you see him break him down, use his disability against him, and then convict him. So it's like the poor kid's on words that were fed to him because who shot him in the head? That if you look at any of his in transcripts, reading, I mean, not just watching, but if you read word for word, you will see how they put this stuff into his head, how everything that they said was put there. So he wasn't even going by anything that he seen at all. He was just completely being whatever you want me to say. I think I'm saying the right thing, So I do have another question from JJ.
Just
sure.
one more thing on the Brennan. He's doubly disadvantaged as well because his
Mhm.
defense representation effectively worked for the prosecution.
That
It
was the
was
question.
oh, was it? Oh, I'm sorry.
It was. It was. What do you see in the issues of Brendon's lawyer, Len Kaczynski?
A disgrace to be called a defense lawyer. The way, again, basing it on what you've seen, but the setting up with the polygraph testing, it's not zealously defending your client. It's not offering a defense or protecting his due process rights. It is not protecting him. The defense lawyer is a shield from the state who have a vast array of resources and who are looking to convict you. You effectively have one friend, your defense lawyer. It is their job to go, to use an English sort of sporting analogy of cricket, to go into bat for you, to go and protect you. And Brendon wasn't protected. And I find the idea of defense lawyers not being zealous advocates for their client difficult to some, especially when he was, he had so many disadvantages. He not only is he young, he has no representation in that initial interrogation. He has the mental disabilities as well. I find that really, really, really difficult to understand.
And to know that, I mean, like I said, we read everything. So knowing that at the time when he was supposed to be representing him, he hadn't even spoke to Brendon before he was speaking to the press. So that's like, first of all, you're putting it out there in the press that he's a guilty person before you even spoke to it or even looked at anything. So I really feel just like you and everybody probably that's in the audience. Brendon had nothing supporting him whatsoever. There was no support whatsoever at all, and that's a very sad thing. And in the courts, they won't look at that. They only look at paper, what's written, what went in trial, and they don't look at the psyche of it or any of that. So I find that very difficult myself. And I don't know. I just find that very difficult. But okay. And here's a question for you. Okay. If you could change one thing in the justice system, what do you think you would change?
That's a tough one. I ask most of my guests this question. There are many, but I think if we could change it from sort of end and then going back to start to have benefits, what I would do, I would send less people to prison. I would adopt like the Nordic model that they use in Scandinavia of, you need you need to be sentenced for a greater amount of time. People in England and Wales can be sent to prison for, 5-6 weeks, a smaller amount of time than that. And I find the idea that prison doesn't work in this country. Around about almost 50% of everyone who's released from prison will be back inside prison within 2 years. So whatever you're doing there to deter them from crime simply doesn't work. So I would look to sort of a more rehabilitative model of not incarcerating people, because you have so many negative connotations to serving a prison sentence. And I think if reoffending rates are the same for serving a sentence in the community as they are in prison, and generally they are broadly similar, stop sending people to prison, stop destroying families, destroying careers. That would be my change. Not
rehabilitation.
Not for serious offences. If you're going to go to prison for 2 years, prison's probably the right place if you are a dangerous threat. But we have 77,000 people in prison in England and Wales, and a large number of them will be serving sentences of 6 months or less. And I don't think prison's the right place.
Yeah, and well, here in the United States, when you're a prisoner, when you get out, you still are in a prison situation. You're on parole, which limits you from jobs and housing and everything else. And in your country, if I'm not mistaken, once you've done your time, you've done your time. You don't have no parole or probation.
We do. So if you're given a prison sentence, you generally serve half of it inside the prison estate, and then you serve half on what would be called license, which would have conditions about how you behave. You have to check in with the probation service, and things like that. So we do manage offenders in that way. But I just think that the prison destroys families, and I think it would be better off not being overused. But it's a populist tool. Every political manifesto around general election time, we're going to crack down on crime, we're going to make you safer. Well, you're not, because you don't. But you can't convince the right-wing tabloids in this country to move away from this idea of retribution and punishment has to hurt. It doesn't. Punishment has to work. And punishment has a broad spectrum of meanings, and reform and rehabilitation is a perfectly valid one.
Oh, I hope that's not me. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. That's Linda Low Budget Productions for you. It happens once in a while, so I apologize. But yeah, I agree with you. Rehabilitation is a big major step that nobody really puts any funds into, or they don't push it. They just putting them behind bars, and we have this paid prison situation here in the United States, which is, once you have that, you have open doors for corruption, because you just want more people in there, and you don't really, they're herded like cows, and they're just, nobody cares. And there's mental issues, nowadays that they didn't deal with before, that makes a higher crime rate and higher people going in. So it really is rehabilitation. I've said that myself. I do believe that if they had, drug offenders, put them in a drug jail, get them on rehab while they're in there, and get them off of it and show them a different way before you release them, because otherwise they're just going to go right back to what they had, and this holding it over their head for so long, because we really have stiff parole around here. That really makes it hard to go on and say, okay, I paid my price, but you're still paying your price. You don't get housing or jobs,
And I find it very interesting in terms of child sexual offenders and public disclosure of those offences in the United States. And we study it a bit in one of the modules that I teach at university. And it's like, well, how does someone move on? Granted, it's a horrific crime. You've been punished, but surely for society to function, everybody needs to acclimatize back into society. Right. But with such an open register of sexual offending history, how can they? I've looked at some websites, you can punch in zip codes and it will bring up an area, and there's little sort of pins sort of fly up of all the registered sex offenders in that area. And I get the public protection argument, but from this sort of shaming, and some of these offences are 40 years old. With nothing else on the record except for that 40 years ago. And that's not to underplay how horrific that crime was. But if you want people to exist, we have to move away from shaming and sort of othering groups of people. It doesn't matter who they are.
Putting a label on them and leaving it there without giving them a chance to rehabilitate or have a chance in society. You might as well just stick them in a hole somewhere and expect them to survive. It's just not going to happen. I agree 100%.
If you keep telling someone that this is what they are, if you use the labeling theory, I'm going to tell you what you are, I'm going to treat you like you're a piece of dirt. What are they going to do? They're going to go underground, fall into old habits, and the problem never goes away.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I think, like I said, rehabilitate this person for this, rehabilitate this person for that. You got to have some kind. I mean, that's what prison and jails are supposed to be about, is rehabilitation. And just like with the death penalty to deter, I don't agree with that. It's not a deterring for doing crimes. If you are that kind of mindset and you kill people, knowing you're going to die is maybe something you want. Maybe it doesn't scare you. Who cares? You're getting away with things that are, terrible, and you don't have that mindset. So you don't think of that. So to me, the death penalty, for one, can kill innocent people because of the number of wrongful convictions that we have all around the world. So I've been against that. And that's the same mindset they have. Let's just put them in there and they're okay. Things are going to be okay. They'll come out, they'll learn. actually they learn worse crimes. They're in a place where there's a mixture of all kinds of people in a prison, so it doesn't really give them a chance to do anything but survive, and with
Yeah.
just fight or flight, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I agree. There was another question. I'm going to go up here. Let me see. I think it had to do with what is your thoughts on Fallon, Gone, and Kratz?
Well, Kratz would be the one I know most about. And one of the things I asked all the people who were connected with the case that I've spoken to was, I was shocked by the daily press conferences. And I think when I spoke to Jerry or Dean, or perhaps both of them, I likened it to like an NFL coach, going to a press conference after a game and digesting things for the media. And I was shocked that A, that happened, and B, they were allowed to do that, because one of the biggest problems with jurors is the fact that they are swayed. No matter what the judge says, don't listen to outside considerations. I'm sorry, you can't ask an ordinary person to ignore things that they hear. Everybody is influenced by something. And if you have this sort of daily rundown of, this in a nutshell of a really complex issue, I can't see how it can't prejudice how people think. And it's just wrong. And
it's
obviously,
morally.
Absolutely, morally and ethically. And
you can't unring the bell. You just cannot unring that bell. And his conference was the most shocking thing. That press conference was the most shocking thing I've ever seen. And another one of our YouTube community persons who's passed away, Eric Cozy, interviewed a FBI agent, and he said if he would have did that without collaborating the words with the evidence, there's just no way you could do that. And here's Kratz just spouting this, narrative out there without even checking anything. It did poison the community. It poisoned the jury pool. And you're right. Nobody can unhear that. It still resonates. It really does. So, yeah.
I think as well, in terms of the Kratz sort of daily rundowns and the press conference once, they had the confession from Brendon, I think it basically showed that their case was weak. So we have to influence public opinion. We don't have much here. So we're going to go out and do something that's really controversial to get our narrative into the mainstream, rather than just who's listening in the courtroom. I think it really exposed a weak case.
Yeah, it did. And it's shocking to me how they ever got convicted. I mean, it's a lot of these cases are really shocking to me.
Yeah.
But it's legal word too. It's the way the courts, like the circuit courts and things, the way they read law. I mean, I just watched a case where Kathleen was in front of the Ninth Circuit, and she was talking about fabricated evidence. And the one guy was saying that it's okay if he's guilty, it's okay to put fabricated evidence. And in my view, that's utterly ridiculous. You should never allow any fabricated evidence. I mean, so it's the way they read the law and the way the law is written.
And from speaking to Jerry and Dean, Laura and Kathleen as well, that's my biggest takeaway of the American justice system. The police are permitted to deliberately mislead suspects, to tell them something in order to elicit this confession on the basis that if you didn't do it, you won't confess. Whereas in England and Wales, the police are not allowed to mislead suspects in order to elicit a confession. But it's a shocker. Because if you're under the influence of alcohol, you can't remember, and you think, well, the police are saying this, I must have done it. Yeah. There's going to be a sentence discount for a guilty plea, let's answer it. And
yeah. If you don't understand your Miranda rights, you don't know what you're giving up. And a lot of people, really lay people, don't understand. They just think, okay, this is authority. And in my view, I see Brendon as, that's an elder. That's somebody I'm supposed to respect and not go against, so there's that too. It's all in, it's a lot to do with somebody's psyche, what you're doing. So it's very complicated.
I think it's ingrained in us as children. I tell my children, they're both under 10, and it's, if you're lost, find a policeman. A policeman will help you. You know,
Yeah.
it's not until you're much older that you realize that there is corruption, there is deceit, and the police need certain results to justify certain actions. And
Right.
I think that's what they did in terms of this. They needed that confession to convict two people. And I don't necessarily think that they believed that Brendon would necessarily get convicted on the basis of the confession evidence alone. But here we are.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Here we are 15 years later. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yoris has a question. It says, what is Brendon's legal framework once, if so, Stephen Avery would be exonerated? Would he be let free or not?
I must confess, I don't know the intricacies of the appeal law in US cases, but I think if the Stephen Avery domino falls, I think almost certainly, just by virtue of that, because if Stephen was the guy that committed this offence, the Brendon case will also fall to pieces as well. And that's what I asked Kathleen last week, and you know, that's basically what she said, that almost certainly one will fall with the other. And I think if Stephen goes first, Brendon's will follow suit.
Yeah, I'm hoping that will be it. But I do know of another case where there was just words, you know, and Ryan Ferguson, and that he's still sitting there. So I guess it's, you know, hit or miss. I just pray that, because Stephen's case would be knocked down so badly by Kathleen, which I'm so looking forward to, you know, that it would just fall apart. There's absolutely no way you could, you know, convince him, even though there's two killers with two different types of death and one victim. You know, I mean, that in itself is bizarre. Okay. And Stephen being convicted twice wrongfully is another bizarre thing. I mean, it's like, I think this is a history-making justice system case. I really think that this will make some changes. Immunity is something I really hope they get rid of. You know, I mean, them being able to lie and then just get away with it when they knowingly know it's wrong. I mean, that you might as well just give them the key to the city and say, hey, have at it, do whatever you want. You know, I mean, that's just basically what it is. So yeah, that bothers me a lot. So what are your future plans for your channel and where you would like to go with this? I mean, you have a lot of publications and a lot of things that you've written, and your thesis on what is it? The day of a defense, something, a defense lawyer, modern era.
Yeah, so the defense lawyer in the modern era is my PhD thesis, and it looked at the idea that we no longer have classic adversarial lawyers who are that sort of zealous advocate, as I described earlier. We now have cogs in a process, and the process is all geared around efficiency, doing things quickly, and doing things as cheaply as possible. So that's pretty much the starting point for all of my research. I use that as the foundation and try to examine sort of changes in the justice system that are just driven by efficiency. In England and Wales, we've had a lot over the last 20 years to make the process more managerial or bureaucratic in nature. And I'm actually writing a paper an academic paper with Jerry Buting.
Oh, great.
Like a comparison between my experiences in England and Wales, and he's going to cover the US side, and we're going to cover the two, because arguably this managerialist stuff stems from the US. We've taken our influence there. So hopefully we'll have that out in the summer.
Great. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have any real lined up? I'm really going to look forward to when you release it. When are you releasing this, your next video with
hopefully within the next 7 to 10 days. I'm swamped with marking coursework at the moment for my students, so that takes priority sort of over the channel. But that should hopefully be out in the next 7 to 10 days. And then what I'd like as well is I've got a couple of people lined up who have just private citizens that have had, you know, experiences within the criminal justice system. So I'm going to talk to a young lady who was a victim of domestic violence and coercive control in terms of her partner, and her partner was one of the first people to be convicted in Wales for coercive control in terms of forcing her to do certain things under his kind of threatening demeanor.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to speak to her about her experiences and, how that felt, sort of coming forward and making this stand, because as with a lot of domestic violence, it's kind of brushed under the carpet.
Right.
The victim might think, well, I don't want to complain. I don't want to do this. So, yeah.
I hope it's not going down. Yep. Sorry.
That's okay. It's fine.
So I'm sorry, I didn't even hear the last part. I'm sure it's the last sentence that I didn't hear, but they might have. I don't know.
Well, but basically, yeah, just get some more sort of, human sort of participants in terms of, what their experiences are in the criminal justice, not necessarily lawyers or advocates,
right,
or whatever. But
it's good to hear from regular people. I mean, it's great. Sounds like you got a great lineup. I know you're interested in helping students with the following criminal justice procedures and defense rights and access to justice. I'm just reading from your, I mean, long list of things. I mean, I'd be interested in reading some. Have you wrote a book? Or you probably will write a book after this?
Yeah, I've written a couple of books. One of my passions is disclosure law, which looks at sort of evidence that should be given to the defense in order to, balance out the inequality of arms between the prosecution and defense. Are you still there? And I've written a book on the PhD that's being published in Washington, DC, hopefully in September. Okay, cool. I'll wait then. No worries. What do I do to relax? I watch a lot of sport. So yeah, sport. I try to read sort of just general, easy reading books, listen to music, play with the kids, that sort of stuff. What did I think of Wales on Saturday? Is that to do with the rugby, Jay? Rugby's one.
So sorry.
That's quite all right.
So sorry. I apologize. Linda Low Budget really kicks in about this time. So
that's quite all right.
And my fellow people out there are going, Linda, you need to hardwire. You need to hardwire. So I apologize. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
So okay, I'm like stuttering here because I'm not sure where we left off. But I think we were talking about the future of your channel. So and what your future plans were.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully to just keep growing it, grow the subscribers, grow the views. I mean, the Kathleen video, I don't think in my wildest dreams that I think within a week it would be at sort of 5,500. Most of them in and around the high hundreds, but
oh, you're going to get a lot of people from now on, believe me. Good. So we are very much welcoming you to our community. We love what you're doing. It's fantastic. I mean, I'm telling you, it's just like, who is this person that was able to get all these people? But I would imagine your background has a lot to do with it and what you're doing. So it is good. I mean, you can't go to every little YouTuber and be on there. I understand that. And your interviews are very thorough, and they're what we want to know. So you're asking the right questions, and we as a whole appreciate that very much. I'll let you know that. So,
Good.
and
Good.
I'll be plugging your channel and giving the links and all this and that, and definitely be looking forward to your interview with the specialist on confessions, because that is one of
Yes,
those big
yes.
things. I
Yes,
mean, it
yeah,
is such a
really
big
enjoyed that
thing.
one.
I'm not even sure if I'm connected with the chat yet. So if there's any questions anybody has or anything,
Someone asks me, would I be interested in interviewing Ken Kratz, and what would I ask him?
oh yeah.
I sent him a Twitter message. I couldn't find his email address, and I sent him a Twitter message when I started the channel, to see whether he'd be interested in coming on, and he didn't.
Oh no, don't let me go out again.
He didn't respond. But I would be
He didn't
interested
answer?
in. No, he didn't answer. I would be interested in asking him, just what was the driving force behind those daily press conferences? Was it to control the narrative, or was there something else, some other reason? Because I think that's
I think that's a lot of our questions too. Why would you want to be in front of the press pushing this narrative that you have, if it isn't? I mean, usually they avoid all these kind of questions and avoid going into the press because they don't want to hurt their case.
Yeah.
To me, it seemed like he just wanted everybody to believe this narrative he had, so he had to keep pushing it. And I think that's all.
Yeah,
a lot of us feel.
As a comparison to in England and Wales, we had a young lady in her 20s a couple of weeks ago was discovered as being murdered, and or having been murdered, and it was the suspect currently in sort of police detention was a Metropolitan Police officer, and some news agencies report his name and say who they are, say who he was. Some news agencies just say, the suspect is a serving Metropolitan Police officer, because of that prejudice, that if anything can prejudice the prosecution's case at trial. Because despite my interests in defense rights, I still want justice to be done. That's the most the most important takeaway. Justice has to be done, but there's two sides to that. It's not just prosecution-minded stuff. There are important defense rights as well.
Exactly, and I think it gets lost. It really does. I mean, it's a fine line. What you do, you want. It boils down to truth and how you fairly get it. You know what I'm saying? You fairly get it, not coercion, not this lying. The police being able to lie, that just sets up corruption. It sets for a no-win situation, as far as I'm concerned, for anybody. If you're guilty, I want to see you go. But if you're not guilty and you've been lied to and coerced and things like within the Avery case, that's just not justice. A lot of people are on the fence about Stephen, but when you read into it, I personally don't think either one of them are guilty in any way. But even if you do think Stephen's guilty, the trial in itself and the way the evidence was gotten, and the conflict of interest and the way the prosecution was repeatedly saying something, that's not fair. It's not fair. He had not a fair jury pool. So you're right. I think they should be banned from saying anything, honestly, until the case is done. Then give your outcome on the case, maybe, Yeah. But I think a lot of them just get this, especially during, when political things are running or it's an election year, they're pushing things that, like you said, you don't give. So it's just words. A lot of it is just words.
Yeah.
And it, so I don't know. What does Dr. Johnston think about the there was a video released by Ken Kratz, and it was Jerry Buting and Stephen in a lawyer privacy room, and they were filmed. they were filmed from the jail. So he wants to know what you think about filming in a privacy room.
I've not seen the video or heard about that, but if that's the case, I mean, lawyer-client communications are privileged. People can't know what was said. You can say stuff to your lawyer and he's not allowed to repeat that. It's privacy because, and that's sacrosanct. He is your shield. So who was recording? The police were recording, or
it was I would imagine it was the jail recording it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's woeful. And any evidence, if that happened in England and Wales, any evidence that came out of that privacy recording would be ruled inadmissible at trial, so the jury would never get to hear it. There would be no net benefit. So that's the basic idea. Any kind of like ill-gotten evidence or, you know, misleading people, you can't have any net benefit of that. So that would be struck out here in England.
Right. Do you think the law information should be do you think law information should be punished that involves do you think the law should be punished in the Avery case? I think that's what Paul's trying to say.
The law enforcement officers, I mean, it's difficult because I suppose you really have to scratch beneath the surface and find out their intention that influenced their behavior. If, you know, if Kratz didn't think he didn't do it, but there's enough evidence here and we can control this narrative and that will influence people and we'll get the conviction. If there's been things that, like the recording of the privacy room, absolutely. If officers were found to have planted evidence, yes, absolutely. Answer to the full force of the law. I don't think officers should be immune from poor behavior or abhorrent behavior that simply means an innocent person's in jail because you are corrupt. That needs to be rooted out. And the only way you're going to root that out of a police force or any institution is to set examples.
Right. And that immunity, that's what brings on this. That brings on them being able to fabricate or plant or whatever, you know. So I agree. Wants to Jay would like to know, what was your opinion after watching Making a Murderer 1 or 2?
So I watched season 1 and I didn't know anything about the case at all. So everything I knew, I didn't look it up whilst watching it. I wanted it to be you know, a surprise, and I was shocked that of how it ended. But I did feel and I think Jerry and Dean were very good lawyers. I know they've come into criticism. They're sound men, and I think they did the best, the best of what they could. They have, you know, an enviable situation of just the sheer weight of all of this. They could have done stuff better, as Kathleen pointed out in my chat with her. But after watching season 2, I felt like with Kathleen, with Stephen and Steve and Laura, with Brendon, I am confident that these dominoes are going to fall. This corruption is going to be exposed. And I think both men will be free. And I think Kathleen has a slightly easier start point. And I think she points this out in the chat. She knows what didn't work, so she knows not what to waste her time with. She has a baseline of things that they can follow up. And I think ultimately she will be extremely successful. I mean, if you were looking for the epitome of that zealous advocate, that's Kathleen Zellner.
I agree.
So
she's a tiger. She's a tiger. And I agree with you as far as Jerry and Dean are concerned. Once you read what they had to deal with, like if you read word for word in the transcripts and the trial and all this, they were stopped on so many things. I mean, so they did the best they could. They really do. And you're right. Kathleen knows what didn't work the first time. She's going at it like a tiger, and she just isn't going to give up. I think she's continually, like she said, she'll just write another motion. She'll just keep on writing them motions. So so that's great. But I don't know. I don't know what to say to you. Who's, and I hope I'm not, yep, I hope I was losing you again.
No, there we go. Yeah.
It's Linda Low Budget. Sorry, everybody knows except for my guests. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Don't worry.
We're just not. We do the best we can here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I covered all my questions, and you're just a fascinating person. I look forward to seeing a lot more of what you're going to do, and reading your writings with Buting. I'm looking forward to that. And now everybody gets to know who was that guy. I mean, because they were all, who is this guy? We got to know who this guy is. So yeah, Zellner's yes, she is. So if there's not any other questions, I think I will let him go. He's a busy man. He has a family, and this is 8:30 at your time. So
it is.
Yeah. So I think that's good. I think we're fine. If I get any questions, I'll email you on them. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. If I can ask, if you've not subscribed to the channel, if you could check it out, like it, subscribe it. And I think someone's posted the Twitter handle. It's @cnatters on Twitter. But thank you for having me.
It's all in the description too. Everything you need to know is down there. All your links to your YouTube and your Twitter. Wonderful. And now we'll just be seeing more of what you get to bring us. I'm very, very appreciative of it. Everybody here loved your interview, thinks it's wonderful. And all of them have been good. So thank you very much for being my guest. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please check out his channel. He's got a lot more good things coming. All right.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Thank you.